The Master Tavern Keeper's History of the Old World. And so, back to the saga of Dorin Heldor and Catelyn Candoom it is then. Although, do keep in mind what we said about the Black Gulf, as it will become quite relevant quite soon. Anyway, as I recall, we left the two dwarf adventurers as they were leaving the harbour of Barak Var out into the choppy waters of the bay itself. It was just after noon when the boat, the Requiem for a Falcon, passed under the portcullis of the enormous entrance to the sea gate of Barak Var. Behind and above the ship, the dwarves manning the port's defences, both those wielding crossbows and black powder handguns, as well as those operating the old cannons of the era and the ever-reliable grudge and bolt throwers, were no doubt carefully eyeing the boat until it had sailed out of range, as is still their practice even today. You see, vigilance is more than a word in Barak Var. It's an oath that every dock dwarf has to take. Be sure, be vigilant, be aware. They can often be heard chanting, particularly when they're all drunk after the last shift of the week. Anyway, from Hans Voigt's retelling of the saga of Dorin and Catelyn, I remember that he described the ship that Dorin and Catelyn travelled upon as a singularly unique vessel. The basic hull was that of an old grue bark, not so different from one of the original riverboats used by the dwarves during their golden age. However, the usual rows of oars had been removed, and instead, exposed paddle wheels had been attached in their place. These being powered by a large rotary sail on the main deck, such as the type you see upon Gazan harbarks. This made the smaller boat remarkably nimble, and the vessel ploughed through the water at a fine old speed, true to its captain, Orla Ironhorn's boasting. Oh, yeah, but what about when the wind was not blowing, Master Tavern Keeper? Let's say that things became rather more arduous. Apparently, in the centre of the hull, attached to both paddle wheels by gears and cogs, was a broad, horizontal gyre that could be turned by pushing on one of its 8 handles whilst walking around it. If the wind stopped, then every free hand had to go below to push the gyre around. Apparently, it quickly got the nickname the Wheel of Pain. Anyway, despite the fact that neither Catelyn nor Dorin had ever ventured out into open waters before, both were apparently surprisingly happy on the sea. Unusual for a dwarf. And also, neither of them became seasick, although this is not so unusual for a dwarf. You see, the race as a whole has such doughty, resilient constitutions that only those with a particular intolerance to motion suffer any such sickness. Ugh, lucky fellas. Took me quite a while to find my own sea legs, I have to say. I spent the first week on the boat to Astalia with my head over the side. Ah, yes. As is the case for so many passengers in my experience. You are lucky in those waters that a shark didn't jump up and bite it off. Oh, yeah, like you said happened to that Arabian merchant. Ah, indeed. Anyway. As the two dwarves were not emptying the contents of their breakfast out into the sea at every opportunity, Dorin and Catelyn had time to wander the boat and meet the crew. The crew consisted of a gunner, 3 marines, a cabin beardling, the captain herself, a shipmaster, and another sea engineer. A fairly typical crew for such a small boat. Oh, but wait to grow the cock there. A shipmaster, you say? Is a shipmaster not like the captain then? You know, with a title like that, are they not the master of the ship? Ah, well, I cannot fault your logic, but shipmasters are not members of the crew per se. Rather, they're actually bona fide, as they say here in Tilea, representatives of the engineering guild. You see them on all dwarf boats, normally bustling about in little groups of 2, 3, even 4. They're always checking and inspecting this, that, or the other, for ultimately it is they who are charged with maintaining the integrity of the boat. And they're well qualified to do so, for most have, during their long careers, also been heavily involved in the construction of the numerous ships that originate in the port. Basically, it's the shipmasters who keep each and every boat in working order and afloat. On the other hand, command of the ship, where they go and what they carry, lies solely with the captain.
Ugh, I see. Trust the dwarves to make things complicated. Oh, yeah, that is so typical of our bearded friends. But I too also have a question, Master Tavern Keeper. What are these marines? Back in Nordland, in the city of Dietershafen, we had a preceptory of the Knights Mariner, the Templar Marines. Are dwarf marines similar to these?
Ah, from the Order of the Mariner, the prestigious Knights of Manan, you mean? Yes. I remember drinking with a few of them fellas whilst I stopped over in Marienburg one time. Our friend Engla Brack, the matriarch of the sea, putting them to good use, guarding the High Temple of Manan, the city itself, and its merchant fleets whilst they're in dock.
Oh, yeah. I also fought alongside some of them during the liberation of Marienburg in 1555, after the short occupation of the city by the forces of the Duke of Longueuil.
Ha! Short it was. It was probably so short that I bet they won't even mention it in the history books. But I tell you what, I would not be surprised if the Bretonnians try it again soon, say in another 30 or 40 years. And next time, they may well be a lot more effective and able to hold on to the port for longer than a few months. I'd say it's something to keep our eyes on.
Oh, yeah. I just hope that the Grand Duke of Middenland will be as quick to rally his allies and act if it happens again.
Ah, next time he may not be able. I suspect the current civil strife back home is going to throw stones into the gears of all sorts of institutions and slow the already ponderous political machinery of the empire to a snail's pace. Marienburg was lucky back in 5055. I doubt it will be so again.
Och, but anyhow, what about these Knights Mariners then?
Ah, well, the Knights Mariners of the Cult of Manan are well-trained marines. Soldier sailors, if you like. I hear that Engla Brack, in her role as matriarch of the cult, has actually poured quite a lot of coin into the order following the Bretonnian invasion, and there are plans afoot to build a small contingent of ships for them to help protect Marienburg. However, certain factions within the cult have been resistant, so I doubt they'll have anything approaching that for another few decades at the earliest. Hence, the risk of a return of the forces of Longueuil before the century is up. We shall see. Anyway, the cult is unusual in that they will recruit any individual into the order, not just the noble-born, as is the norm for most knightly orders. The only prerequisite is sufficient devotion to Manan. The Marines of the Dwarves, too, are soldiers. Soldiers of the sea, if you like. In Barak Var, they too come from a number of backgrounds, with some being young clansmen, others veterans, but many are actually extravagantly dressed longbeards, eager to relive the glory of their youths.
Oh, yeah, sowieso, as we are on this topic, then I have another question, Master Tavern Keeper. Why are the Longbeards of Barak Var so extravagant, as you say? I have met a few Longbeards from other dwarf holds in my time, and they are far from extravagant. In fact, they tend to be grey, dour, and merciless.
Why? The answer is easy. Wealth. You see, with Barakvar being such a trading hub for the entire world, the dwarves of the port have access to some of the rarest and most exotic jewellery and fabrics. The perfect conduit for displaying one's wealth and stature to your peers. Here, too, the well-to-dos, following the age-old mantra of the wealthy everywhere. If you've got it, flaunt it. But dwarves are a little more practical than that, for wearing their wealth also means that it is close at hand for trading or selling. In point of fact, something that is very common for the dwarves of the hold is to wear arm rings made from silver, which are ideal for use in lieu of hard currency when in foreign climes. You can just whip out your axe, cut off as much as you need from a ring to barter for whatever you need. I saw my old friend Drogar do this a few times in the numerous ports that we stopped over in and around the Sea of Claws.
Oh, yeah, now that makes all very good sense. Oh, but as we seem to be talking about all these different types of dwarf sailors, why don't you round things off by telling us about these last two? You know, the gunners, and that they're cabin beardling, was it?
Ah, indeed. Well, as you'd expect, gunners are weapon specialists, dedicated to maintaining and firing a ship's cannons. This is a highly skilled position and takes years to master. Knowing when to exactly fire your cannon, certainly on rough seas, and efficiently preparing and loading a cannon in order to keep up a good rate of fire are simply skills that cannot be taught. They can only be learnt by doing. That said, most of the time the gunner is just another member of the crew who has to swab the deck and the like, just the same as everyone else. However, once battle is joined, they come into their own. Now, the number of gunners obviously depends on the size of the boat and the number of cannons it has, but with all Ironhorn's boat being so small, there was only the one. A large, breech-loading swivel gun that they had at the prow of the boat.
Oh, yeah. Und this cabin beardling?
Ah, well, this is where many lifelong sailors begin their travails. Cabin beardlings are young dwarfs who wish to sail the seas. They are fetchers and carriers of all sorts of things, including, most importantly, black powder for the cannons, which is kept below deck so it doesn't get wet. However, most cabin beardlings are often left doing the most tedious and dirtiest of tasks. But it is from these humble beginnings that many a gunner, an engineer, and even a captain have emerged. Never underestimate the drive that a lowly start and hard work gives a person. It brings out the best and polishes up even the toughest of stones. Now, anyway, that's enough ship talk. Let's get back to our tale, eh?